Om Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. In the third Shatkam of the Bhagavad Gita, in addition to Jnana Yoga and Jivatma Paramatma Aikyam, which has come very beautifully in the 13th and the 14th and the 15th chapter, we have an important section about values. 15th chapter towards the end was like the pinnacle of the whole Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna tells Arjuna, Iti Guhyatamam Shastra. The greatest of secrets I have given to you, Arjuna. And why am I giving it to you? Because you are anaga. You are sinless. Now, suddenly Krishna realizes that he is giving a message to people, and if this message is going to be, it has to internalize, there has to be a certain change. When we are born with certain gunas, and we are born with certain vasanas. If you see Swami Chinmayananda's BMI chart, you will see one big V. That V signifies our vasanas, the gunas, the various tendencies that we have inherited because of our past karmas. These tendencies are very strong. That is why we will see in this chapter, there is the divine in me, there is the Daivi Sampat, there is the Asuri Sampat. There is a favorite story of mine of a painting done by a great artist. He was looking for a godlike human being, and he finds a very saintly looking shepherd, very divine eyes, very peaceful. He asks him if he will model for a painting. He agrees, and he makes a painting of a human being who looks like God. Everybody in the country bought one of those paintings to see how divine a human being can possibly be. Many years later, the same painter wanted to look for the most devilish form of human beings, and he found one such person who has been convicted for a lot of serious crime. And then when the person agreed to model for the painting, so the painter saw a very cruel, a very hard-hearted person, and as he was giving the final touches to the painting, he saw tears in the eyes of the model. And the man says, perhaps you do not recognize me. I am the same person who modeled for your earlier painting. Stories we know, but very important is that there is the devil in me, there is the divine in me. It is because of the divine in me, because of the good karmas of the past, we have had the access to come to spiritual knowledge. To come to this level, it means there is a lot of the Daivi Sampat in all of us. But we also know that there is a good amount of the Asuric component. What is this Asuric component? Swamiji talks of one more component called the Rakshasa component. What is the Rakshasa component? Although the Rakshasa component is not there. So Swamiji calls this the Dvesha Pradhana Swabhava. Dvesha Pradhana is a character of a person who's extremely cynical, always complaining, very difficult to live and be with such a person. If a person has an authority in your life, it is extremely difficult to be in, and it is part of a bad karmas to be in with a person who's got a Dvesha Pradhana. Because of a lot of suppressed dislike, the person may develop into anger, into violence, very volatile, unapproachable. The Shastras call such a person a Rakshasa. These people are very insensitive to other people's feelings. They may be rude, gross-minded, and often such a person is not conducive for spiritual progress. This is the Dvesha Pradhana or the Rakshasa Sambhava, which Krishna does not discuss. Now, this is what we call the Asuri Sampat, which Swamiji calls it Raga Pradhana Swabhava. This character is prone to be attached to sense objects and to people. Such a person has a desire for name, fame, money, position, revelry, etc. Although his focus in life is material enjoyment, he means no harm to others. His nature is also unconducive for spiritual progress because he is an extrovert and he has no time for spiritual studies, no time for introspection. They do not find spirituality or scriptures relevant to life. Very busy people. Krishna calls them Asuri Swabhava, one who revels in sensory pleasures. Although this lifestyle does not result in spiritual downfall. It certainly results to spiritual stagnation. And then there is the Jnana Pradhana Swabhava, a character which considers spiritual knowledge as primary goal. They do not dislike money, name, or fame, but they do not pursue them at the cost of spiritual growth. Krishna calls them the Daivi Swabhava. To know more about this, we will begin. Dr. Sandhya Ravi, if you can explain the opening verse in this chapter for us.
Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Thank you, sir, for that very nice introduction to this chapter, because character is what we are going to talk about in the first few verses. The previous three chapters discussed the pursuit of Gnanam as the goal of life. And now Krishna is shifting to, his teaching is shifting. And in this and the next chapter, he talks about the way of life that must be adopted by a mumukshu. So Swami Param has also mentioned this, that a mumukshu must constantly seek refinement of character. And that needs to take place if one is a serious spiritual seeker. The mind has to be prepared to receive this jnana. So we cannot expect an unprepared mind to go straight to self-knowledge. This reminds us of the teaching early in medical school. Imagine giving a scalpel to a first-year medical student and say dissect. Our teachers were very strict. We had to know the anatomy very well before we were allowed to dissect the human body. And the preparatory process is mentioned in the Veda Purva section of the Vedas, and chapters 16 and 17 speaks about this. Character, personality influence the way we live and the way we perceive our goals. So this character of Swabhava, which Dr. Hegde just told us about, is compared to the wealth of a person. Because Swami Param says, with this wealth, you can actually purchase your goal. And that is why it is called Sampati. And verses 1 to 3 talk about Daivi Sampati or Swabhava. That is the inner wealth that will help us accomplish our goal of moksha. So 26 ennobling qualities are discussed in this first three verses. And verse 1 lists 9 of these. Coming to verse 1, Abhayam Sattva Samshuddhir Jnana Yogya Vyavastitihi Dhanam Damascha Yajñascha Swadhyayastapa Arjavam. So looking at the meaning of these words, Abhayam is, Sri Bhagavan Vacha, Bhagavan said, Abhayam is fearlessness, courage, self-confidence, faith in oneself, in Guru, in scriptures, and God. So one has to be heedless of the obstacles that come in our path. Earlier in the Gita, we have heard, Manushyanam Sahasreshu Kaschidyati Siddhaye. So spiritual journey is often a lonely journey. And we need tremendous courage to go on this path. And this courage can come only with bhakti, viveka, and absolute surrender. Because fears ties the mind of the heart to the physical body, and we end up focusing on ego, body, and objects of fear. And Mundaka Upanishad also says, Nayamatma balahinena labhyaha. The self cannot be won by anyone who is without. So to be fit for self-realization, one must be fearless. The second quality is Sattva Samshuddhi, that is purity of mind. Sattva is Antakaranam, that is the mind, and Samshuddhi is purity. So constantly we have to work on our thoughts, reduce Raga Dvesha, and end up with pure mind. The third is Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi, that is steadiness in the yoga of knowledge. So we have to apply our Guru-given scriptural wisdom in the committed pursuit of Jnana Yoga through Shravanam, Mananam, and Nididhyasanam. As Swami Param constantly points out, Shravanam is the consistent, systematic study of Vedantic scriptures for a length of time under the guidance of a competent teacher. Mananam, reflecting, understanding, removing doubts, and Nididhyasanam, the constant remembrance. So Vyavastitihi is the committed pursuit. The next comes Dhanam, charity. This is the most difficult virtue, as Swami Param says, and he points out several merits of this virtue, which is difficult for us to practice, but in some way we'll have to learn to do it. First and foremost is the remedy of lobha, the greed. Second is it widens the gap between the rich and poor, so it disrupts the social order. Third is it gives us vairagyam. If we practice it as a sadhana, it could be a prayashchitta karma, and it's a beautiful sadhana if you are practicing it all our life, especially at the time of death. Dhamma, that is Dhamma is self-control, that is Indriya Nigraha. We do it not by suppressing, but gaining mastery over our sense organs. And in a way, we achieve Indriya Jaya. The next is Yajna, worship of the Lord. And this is a constant thing that we must keep doing, either in the form of ceremonial worship, ritualistic worship, puja at home. The second type is converting all actions as a karma yogi. We practice karma yoga. And the next is Swadhyaya, which is scriptural studies, which is actually Brahma Yajna of the Pancha Mahayajna that we have heard about. And it can be called Parayana or the Artha Pradhana, where we are contemplating on the meaning. And of course, tapas, the last two qualities. Tapas is self-discipline, which is restraint of our appetite for various pleasures. And we must remember that austerity, self-denial, and renunciation, penance are all only the means, but not the actual end of our goal. And arjavam, coming to the last quality in this verse, is integrity, straightforwardness, where, like the Rijubhava, the arrow-like straightness of our thought, word, and deed, we must practice so that there is a harmony in our personality and there is no splintering of our personality. So these are the 9 qualities that this lifestyle, which is conducive to spirituality and moksha. Hari Om, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sandhya. From my side, I found certain audio disparity. Your voices were not very clear. I do not know what others felt about it. I thought it was... we'll proceed. We will go to Apeksha for verse 2. Apeksha, can you explain verse 2 for us?
Hari Om, sir. Ahimsa satyam krodhas tyagaha shantir paishunam daya bhuteshva aloluptavam mardarvam hir chapalam. Continuing with the virtues here, Krishna is saying ahimsa. Ahimsa means non-violence in thoughts, words and action. The rule is what I will give to the world is what I will get back. But at all times, shall we follow ahimsa blindly? That's a question we have in our mind. So here it means judicious ahimsa. Gita is a great example. Mahabharata is a great example where Duryodhana, himsa was the only solution left. So you have to be judicious here. Satyam. Satyam, we know truthfulness. But more than the truthfulness here, it talks about avoidance of untruth here. If speaking the truth hurts the person, then we may avoid speaking the truth. But that does not mean that we speak untruth. So we have to avoid speaking untruth at all cost. But what if we have to tell a painful truth? Then Swamiji says, there's a way for it. Speak many pleasant truths first. And when the situation is ideal, just mention the unpleasant truth very briefly. Do not talk too much about it. And then you will find that the person is more receptive and improves. Akrodaha. Handling anger, or how do we manage anger in such a way that we understand that anger is nothing but mental pain. The mind is agitated and anger has come up. Just like how physical pain comes in the body. It means there's something not right in the body. So if anger comes up, the mind is giving us a signal that something is not right. So we have to understand that anger means the inner signal of the mind, and we find the remedy of the anger. But what do? We start shouting. Shouting is a consequence of anger. So find the remedy for anger. That's what it means here. Tyagaha. Tyaga externally means you become a sannyasi. But there's another way which is internally. You do tyaga. That means detachment. It means we have the right attitude towards all the possessions that we have. The line here is God is the owner and we are just the trustee. Whatever we possess in our life belongs to God. We can enjoy but cannot be dependent on them. Shantihi, peaceful mind, freedom from any emotional ups and downs or stress or strain. How can we maintain that? By following the karma yoga way of life. Apaishanam, not publicizing the defects of other people. We all love gossiping and talking about weaknesses of other people. But Swamiji says, Krishna here says, if we have to at all talk about others, we have to talk about good things. Publicize good things of others and cover up your own good things. Whereas we do the reverse. We publicize other weaknesses and cover up our own weaknesses. Daya Bhuteshu. Daya means compassion. Bhuta here means all living beings, including animals, plants, human beings, everyone. We understand by standing in their shoes, how do they feel? This is a very important virtue, because if we understand and have compassion, we will never injure others. Aloloptavam, not yielding to temptations of sense objects. Very important. We all know this world is full of Maya and we get addicted very easily. So first time itself, we have to say no. Because first time when anything comes up, be it alcohol, drugs or cigarette, we are the master and they are the slaves. And the second time, cigarette, drug, alcohol or whatever temptation it is, they become the master and we become the slave. So there's a saying that Vali in Ramayana they used to say that if anyone would come in front of Vali, he would take away half the strength. Vali is like the temptation we have. If it comes in the front, it will take away half of our willpower. So it's better you do not go in front of Vali. Mardhavam, gentleness in handling everything. Now, what does it mean? They say that a wise person is stronger than a diamond and tender than a flower. When people criticize you, misbehave with you, be so strong that it does not affect your mind. And while you are handling other people around you, be very gentle, like a flower. But our mind is reverse. When we face a situation, we become soft. And when we deal with people around us, we are very rude. 3, modesty. It's a healthy sense of shame that we have, which stops us from doing wrong actions in front of others. Achapalam, restlessness at body level. You will see a lot of people fidgeting, being nervous, biting their nails. That happens when our mind is restless. So just be absolutely relaxed. Know that God is with you always, and that way our mind will always be relaxed. Hari Om, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Apeksha. It came nice and clear. We go to the next speaker, Dr. Netra. Welcome, Dr. Netra, to our group. Verse number 3 for you.
Pranams to everyone. Teja Kshamadruti Shaucham Adroho Nati Manita Bhavanti Sampadam Daivim Abhijatasya Bharata. As it was told by the first speaker, the 16th chapter, the first 3 verses describe the virtues which has to be there in a person when they are going to pursue Daivi Sampati. So the 20 virtues have already been spoken about by the previous 2 speakers. I will be speaking about the next 6 verses. So totally there are 26 such virtues. So the first one is Tejaha. Tejaha means that you should not be a victim of exploitation. Be a simple person, but do not be a simpleton. Be gentle, be good, do not harm others, but you have a responsibility to see that you do not hurt your body, your mind, and you do not become a doormat of yourself so that you're not exploited. So this smartness, that is, this smartness being there, this virtue is called as Tejaha. The next virtue is Shama. We have already seen this virtue, which has already been explained previously in terms of the tiksha or tolerance. Here, Swamiji gives it in a different perspective. He says that there is one of the virtue which is called as akrodha, where it was talking about anger management. So there they say that whenever you feel anger, you see that you filter it through the discrimination so that your anger is lessened or subdued. But here in this Shamaha, Swamiji goes one step higher and he tells that it is not just management of anger. You see that there is no arrival of anger, which is very, very tough. Non-arrival of anger is called as Kshamaha. So first we need to understand, why does anger come? It usually comes whenever we have a lot of expectations and we do not meet those expectations. There is irritation and that leads to anger. So Swamiji says what you need to do. So decrease your expectations. Or another step is convert those expectations into preferences so that it will not affect. If it comes, good. If it does not come, it is okay. So that there is no anger at all, or your anger is just not there. So this angerlessness is called as Shamaha. The third is Dhrutihi. Dhr means holding on, or Dharani means holding power or willpower. So basically here they describe the characteristic of fortitude, determination, perseverance, willpower which needs to be there. So for a sadhaka, it is very important that he goes through this Daivi Sampat. Whenever there is any obstacle or a hurdles, he is not distracted by any of this and he is able to pursue with a very good willpower. For this, Swamiji gives an example of the Samudra Manthanam, where there was a war between the Asuras and Daivas, but eventually the Amrita was got because of the willpower. So Dhritaha means willpower. The next virtue is Shaucham, that is cleanliness. It is not enough that there is cleanliness, there should also be orderliness, which is a very important virtue. The next is Adroha. Here he is talking about Ahimsa at the mental level. We already heard in the second verse, Ahimsa, that is, we should not do Himsa to anyone. Here again, Swamiji goes one step higher and tells, it is not just doing Ahimsa to others, do not even think of doing Ahimsa. So it is not just hitting somebody. Do not even raise your hand. Do not even think about hitting somebody. So this is about Ahimsa even at the mental level, that is Adroha. The last virtue is Nati Manita. Here it is about being humble, free from feeling very superior, humility, which is required. And as a sadhaka, it is very important that you are very humble so that you will be able to do namaskaram. And that is the only way that the knowledge will flow from a higher level to a lower level. So these are the 26 virtues which are required for a Daivi Sampat person so that he can pursue a way of life which is spiritual enrichment and eventually lead on to moksha. Thank you. Hari Om.
Thank you, Netra. Welcome back to our study group. To those who do not know Netra, Netra was a consultant neurologist with us at Narayan Radhalya. And when she left to join NIMHANS a few years ago, she decided to join the study group at home. And because they had a little daughter who had to be taken care of, Dr. Sundar came in. That's how Sundar joined our classes, to primarily look after. And in the few years, you see how Sundar has grown to be a wonderful teacher of the Gita. Dr. Netra now is a professor of neurology at NIMHANS with special interest in demyelinating disease and neuroinfection. Coming back to these first three verses, and you're ready to unmute and answer my question. The question is, see, these things we all know. The problem is that, there's one question which Arjuna asks Sri Krishna. I know what is right and I know what is wrong, but I still do what is wrong. What is that which forces me? Can somebody say which chapter is that?
Kama
Third chapter. Third chapter.
Yeah, you've not only given the chapter, but you've also given the answer. See, as we are studying this Daivi Sampat and Asuri Sampat, we will say all these things we know. But the real challenge is to know and to apply what we know. The real challenge is to be able to apply. That is where we need to work on these values. Otherwise, it is like a mismatch. It is like the donkey carrying the Bhagavad Gita. We continue to remain who we are. The Bhagavad Gita is there on the periphery of us. We can be respected because we are carrying the Bhagavad Gita. There was a story that a donkey was carrying Sri Krishna idol and everybody was falling at the feet of the donkey. The donkey thought no end of itself and began to dance, and the Krishna idol fell down. And then the donkey got all its beatings. Then it realized, see, it is because of the idol on it, you become what you're great. Unless Bhagavad Gita is internalized into us, then otherwise the Asuri Sampat will prevail. We will continue. Dr. Aksha, can you tell us more? Verse 4, please.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Verses 1 to 3 of chapter 16, Lord Krishna has discussed in detail the natural characteristics of the Daivi Sampat, which the earlier speakers have spoken. In this verse 4, Krishna presents in a nutshell the Sangraha of the Asuri Sampat. And again from verses 7 to 21, there is a Vistara or in detailed description of the Asuri Sampat. The verse goes this way: Dambo Darpo Bhimanascha Krodaha Parushyameva Ajnanam Chabijatasya Partha Sampadam Asurim. Partha, O son of Partha, Arjuna. Dambaha, hypocrisy. Darpaha, arrogance. Abhimanaha, vanity. Krodaha, anger. Parushyam, harshness. Ajnanam, ignorance. All these are the traits. Abhijatasya asurim sampadam. These are the marks of a person who is born with these demonic properties. Now Lord Krishna now expounds upon all these 6 traits. First one being Dambaha. Dambaha is hypocrisy or pretension. It can also mean pomp and show. They make an external show of virtuous behavior for impressing others without possessing the matching internal traits. All this is done for the sake of honor, fame, prestige, respect, and so on. Darpaha is arrogance, the feeling of pride arising out of consciousness of one's learning, wealth, family, noble birth, youth, strength, and so on. Such people will look down upon others and disrespect them. Abhimanaha. Abhimanaha is vanity, or it can be pride, regarding oneself as superior, exalted, and worthy of adoration. Swami Paramarthananda very nicely mentions about the difference between Darpa and Abhimana. He says Darpaha is externally expressed and Abhimana is unexpressed internal thought. One is at the bhavana level and the other is at the karma or action level. The fourth characteristic being Krodaha, which is anger. Such people become angry due to the lack of control of the mind. Next is Parushyam. This is the total negation of mildness, being cruel, harsh, rude, and devoid of sensitivity to others' sufferings. Then the last one is Ajnanam. Here, ignorance means ignorance of Dharma Shastra, ignorance of ethics or moral. That is Dharma, Adharma, Vivekaha. All these traits are naturally present in a person who is born with Rajasic or Tamasic tendencies, which Krishna calls it as Asuri Sampat. A verse in Bhajagovindam reminds us of a couple of these traits. And the verse goes this way: Ma kuru dhana jana yauvana garvam harati nimeshat kalas sarvam. Thank you, sir. Hari Om.
Thank you, Dr. Raksha, for a very nice explanation. We go to the next, Dr. Srinivas.
Yes, sir.
Please go ahead.
Daivi sampad vimokshaya nibandhaya surimata ma shuchas sampadam daivim abhijatosi pandava. Let us see the meaning of each word. The first word is Daivi. Here, Daivi, we know that Deva and Asura, these are the actual words. Deva is masculine, Devi is feminine, Daivi is adjectival form of Deva. So similarly, Asuri, it's actually Asura. So because Sampat is a feminine word, so Daivi and Asuri, they are explained in also in the feminine words. So we know that in Sanskrit, the Visheshana, these are called as Vishesha Visheshana. So in whatever Vachana, Linga and Vibhakti, the Sampat is, in the same Vachana, Linga and Vibhakti, the adjectives will be. So that's the why it is called Daivi. So related to Deva or related to Devi, that is Daivi. Sampat means wealth. Vimokshaya. Here Vimokshaya is this whole word can be divided into Sampat plus Vimokshaya. Sampat means wealth. Vimokshaya is again V plus Mokshaya. Mokshaya means Mokshakagi or Parthaya. We call Parthaya, Ramaya. That is, this is a Chaturthi Vibhakti words. So that means Mokshakagi. That is the meaning. V means it's a Upasarga. It is called as Upasarga. In English, we call it a prefix. So actually, these prefixes are there. It enhances the beauty of the language and also the meaning. Like for example, achara means do it, but in Sanskrit it is usually read as samachara. So do it very well. So that like that, these upasargas add to the meaning. So not all upasargas add positively. Some upasargas will add negatively also. So we should remember each upasarga. There are 22 upasargas in Sanskrit. So next is nibandhaya. Similarly here also, ni is upasarga. Bandhaya means to bind. Ni bandhaya means binding very well. That is the meaning. Asuri. Asuri, as I said, the actual word is Asura. The masculine word. The feminine word is Asuri. And the adjectival form is Asuri. Matha means abhishta. That is, it has been decided like this. Or in my opinion, it is like this. Matha. Ma shuchaha. Ma means in Sanskrit again we have two negative words, ma and na. Both means don't. But the difference between ma and na is ma means please don't do it, like that, telling it very smoothly. Whereas na means don't do it, like an ordering way. So this is the difference between na and ma. Shuchaha means grieving. So don't grieve. Do not grieve. This is the meaning of ma shuchaha. Sampadam Daivim. This is a Dvitiya Vibhakti. That is, in this Daivim Sampat, Abhijataha. Abhijataha means born. Actually, Jataha means born. Abhijataha means in this. Abhi is again a Upasarga here. There are 3 words with Upasargas. So in this Daivi Sampadam, Asi. Daivim Abhijataha Asi. Asi means Agiddiya. Ayi unnavu in Telugu. In Kannada, it is Agiddiya. Tat Tvam Asi. Avanu Nine Agiddiya. Like that. So Daivim Abhijataha Asi. Pandava. Pandava means son of Pandu. So again, this is the each word meaning. So let us see the sentence meaning. Daivi Sampad Vimokshaya. Daivi Sampat is for the sake of moksha. Nibandhaya Asuri Mata. Asuri Sampat is for Nibandham. This is my opinion. Do not grieve. You belong to this Daivi Sampadam, O Pandava. This is the meaning of the second line. So next, coming to the actual meanings and inner meaning of the each words. Here, as Hegde sir has already told the definition of Asura. Those who revel in sensual pleasures are called Asuras. So Asushu Ramante Iti Asura. So this is the definition of Asura. Again, Deva means it is our own attitude which is being refined by the studies of Shastras. This is Devas. So Deva and Asura does not mean somewhere in the sky or there is a heaven and there are Devas, and somewhere down in some Patala Loka there is some hell and there are some Asuras and the fight happens. This is the Puranic vision. Puranas, they personify. But actually, these Devas and Asuras, they happen in our own mind. And the Kshira Sagara Mathanam, this does not happen anywhere in the whole galaxies or the whole universe. Nothing. There is no such place as Kshira Sagaram. Our own mind is the Kshira Sagaram, where the fight between the Daivi Sampat and Asuri Sampat happens. And again, as it is already mentioned, Sampat is using, it is Sampat means wealth. That means with wealth we can obtain something. So with this Daivi Sampat we can obtain moksha. That does not mean that directly the Daivi Sampat leads to moksha also. Daivi Sampat leads to eligibility for Jnana Yoga, and then subsequently we get Jnana Yoga and then moksha. This is an indirect path, not a direct path. And again, Asuri Sampat it's binding to the materialistic world. Again, our scriptures never condemn the Asuras. It is only there to mention that these are the qualities of Asuras, so you try to come away from these qualities. And again, our own Asura does not mean you will get moksha. It will only lead to a better life. It only conduce you to obtain moksha. So next word is Mahashaha. Mahashaha, this is
audio issue, Dr. Srinivas. We are not able to hear clearly.
Breaking.
Can you check again?
Can you hear, sir?
Yeah, some distortion is there. Continue. Please continue.
Sir, can you hear me now?
So it's very bad, Dr. Srinivas. It's very bad. Maybe you want to switch off the.
Now?
Can you please switch off the video?
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Yeah, just try now.
How is it? Is it better?
No, please switch off the video. Then just have audio itself.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Is
Please.
it better now?
Yes, sir. Yeah, better.
Mahashuchaha, this is an important message of Gita. Do not grieve. This is very repeatedly being told by Vyasacharya here. And next word is Abhijataha. So here Vyasacharya is telling that you are born in Daivi Sampadam. Here we should not take it as it is a quality which is acquired by birth. So again here, as in the previous verse which we have discussed, being born means every moment we are born, and every moment there is a Srushti Sthiti Laya happens. So every day Srushti Sthiti Laya happens. So it does not mean that by birth I have these qualities, so I need not have to acquire any Sattva qualities, and by birth I have Asura qualities, so I will not get like that. So this is not a quality by birth. These qualities are not by birth. These have to be acquired by us by willful effort. Like that, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Srinivas. After your video was cut off, your voice became clear. Thank you. It was very nice. We enjoyed your explanation of the grammatical aspects of this particular verse and the verse explanation. Thank you. We go to the last speaker for today, Indumati, please.
Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Dvau bhuta sargau lokesmin daiva asura yevacha daivo vistarsha prokta asuram parthame shunu. Asmin loke, in this world, lokaha is samsara. Dvau bhuta sargau, there are two types of created beings. Daivaha, the devas, that is the bhuta sarga named Daiva. This has been explained as Abhaya Sattva Samshuddhihi, Evacha Asuraha, and the Asuras. Daivaha Proktaha Vistarashaha. The Deva has been described elaborately. Shrunume Asuram. Now, hear about the Asuras elaborately. Shrunume Asuram. He again says, Arjuna, now you listen to me. I'll tell you who the Asuras are. In this world, there are two types of created beings, the Devas and the Asuras. The Daiva has been described elaborately. Now hear about the Asuras from me, O Arjuna, says Lord Krishna. Till the end of this chapter, Asuri Sampath has been described in detail because it is these demonic qualities that one has to give up. Here, Sri Krishna says, Hey Arjuna, the entire humanity can be divided into two groups based on their tendencies and values. Asmin loke dvau bhuta sargam. Two types of human creations are there in this world. Daiva, naturally having a spiritual tendency. They might be born in a materialistic society, but something pulls them towards spiritual people, spiritual books, spiritual topics, spirituality. Something attracts them towards spiritual things without their knowledge. Then there is another group, the Asuri Eva. They are utterly materialistic. As Yamadharma Raja has said in his Kathopanishad, Shreyascha Preyascha Manushya Metaha Tau Samparitya Vivinakti Dhiraha. Yamadharma Raja calls them Shreyas and Preyas group. So, Asuras, meaning having materialistic tendencies, even though they are born in a spiritual family, surrounded by Vedas, Brahmanas, temples, gods, scriptures to study, having a Gnani in the family, they turn towards materialistic life. This is samsara, they are asuras. Daivo Vistarasha Proktaha. I have told you about Daivas in detail. Lord says, now again, in detail, the people who have spiritual values, that is, in the first three verses, starting from Abhayam Sattva Samshuddhihi Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi to Teja Kshama Shrutish Jyotish Shaucham Adroho Natimanita. Till this verse, he has explained elaborately the Daivas. So now the Lord says, Arjuna, now you may learn from the elaborate study of Asuri Sampath so that you can avoid such tendencies. You can be forewarned. Thus, Krishna gives an introduction to Asuri Sampath and hereafter elaborates it throughout the chapter. Since the Daivi Sampath leads to liberation, the Asuras, they are led to the bondage of life, that is samsara. The list of divine traits, Daivi Sampath, comprising of 26 qualities, as we have heard from Dr. Netra, already very clearly explained. These qualities, Lord Krishna briefs here, the chief ones being fearlessness, purity of mind, self-control, Vedic studies, austerity, non-violence, truth, spirituality, renunciation, compassion, forgiveness, and absence of pride. The other list consists of 6 vices. These are Asuri traits: hypocrisy, vainglory, egoism, anger, harsh speech, and ignorance of higher values. Here, he further describes the demonic or evil persons and their way of life. They consider kama or lust as the sole cause of creation. Being addicted to it, out of delusion, they try to get unholy things. They boast about their wealth or works and exult in destroying their enemies. Thus, they dislike the Lord also, who is the self of all beings. Such persons are thrown by me, says Lord Krishna, Kshipami, I will just throw them into abominable births, that is, lower births. To summarize this, Swami Chinmayanandaji says, bad is only good misconstrued. Virtue poisoned with ignorance is evil. Evil treated uncured of its poison, when it gets its health, it regains its health, it becomes virtue again. Hari Om. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Indu, for a very nice explanation of the last verse for today. And thanks to all the speakers for your efforts to concise and bring in Swami Paramarthanandaji's message. The last set of talks, this year Swamiji did not come. The last time he came was he spoke upon this particular chapter itself. And for those of us who listen to him, it could be an extremely transformative. You will think, what is there about all these values? As Arjuna said, we know all of them. But still, listening to Swamiji, and as all the speakers, and as Dr. Srinivas also said, the Asuri and the Daiva is not outside. It is there within our minds. We know ourselves. We know the demon in me and the divine in me. And we have to make a very, very conscious effort. So this is a stage until a person gets jnanam, and then afterwards it is a discipline beyond discipline. But until then, we need to work on pruning the Asuri tendency, the Rakshasa tendency, and allowing the Daivi tendency in all of us to share. We'll conclude. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.